Audio Jungle.
This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in the Inland Empire today, joined by Gary Saenz. He is the elected city attorney for the city of San Bernardino. I want to take us back. I remember, I think it was 1977. San Bernardino had been declared an all-American city. In the 90s, the Norton Air Force Base left, and that began a slow and steady decline, being capped off with a bankruptcy filing in August of 2012. This has been a rough few years.
And in August of 2012, the city's financial situation was very, very bleak.
Could you give us a sense of how bleak it was? And I want to remind our viewers, as Mr. Saenz is speaking, that San Bernardino, both the city and the county, was ground zero for the housing foreclosure crisis. So there was a lot going on in the early part of this decade.
That is correct, and actually our financial situation was a couple of decades in the making. As you mentioned, there were a lot of factors that contributed to that, but ultimately in August of 2012 we found ourselves in very bleak financial circumstances, such that we were literally running out of cash, and there was a strong risk and a reasonable a potential risk that we were going to have to close the doors to City Hall because we were not going to be able to meet our payroll obligation. That's how bleak the situation was when we filed bankruptcy in 2012 to seek the court's protection so that we could continue to provide services and employ.
Were there discussions of disincorporation, the city no longer being a city?
I'm sure there were discussions at that time. I need to remind you that I was elected in 2013, so I was not around during that time. But I would imagine that there were such discussions. People were wondering what all of the possibilities and discussing all of the possibilities. Ultimately, as a result of not taking earlier action, the city waited till it was in dire straits and did actually an emergency filing under the bankruptcy laws.
So I must ask you, sir, why, oh why, would you want to become city attorney of a city in bankruptcy?
I wanted to become a part of the solution. I wanted to become part of the team that was going to fix San Bernardino.
What had you been doing prior to election?
Let me first of all answer your first question. I was born and raised in San Bernardino. My father was born and raised in San Bernardino, so I have very, very deep roots, and I love the city. So seeing the city in such a predicament, I wanted to be a part of the solution and join a team that was going to help San Bernardino recover. And that was the main reason why I decided to run for city attorney. And I'm very satisfied with what we've been able to accomplish, having become a part of that team and a part of the solution.
What were you doing before?
I was in real estate. I've been an attorney. I graduated from UCLA School of Law in '77. I've been an attorney ever since. I was a private practicing attorney in San Bernardino with a focus on real estate. So I had not engaged per se in municipal law, but with my experience and my background and my integrity and knowledge on how to approach legal issues and wanting to be a leader and of a team within the city attorney's office of San Bernardino that is at the helm of the bankruptcy proceedings with the assistance of outside counsel. We have outside counsel specializes in bankruptcy. However, I am at the helm of that team and the legal proceedings as we move through the bankruptcy.
One of the biggest challenges that was facing San Bernardino and still continues to face San Bernardino is the weight of its pension obligations.
Absolutely.
Many folks have pointed to the city's pension obligations as one of the main, if not part of the main, reasons why the city had to file for bankruptcy. Give us a sense of what's happening along those lines.
Well, I can tell you that absolutely during the early part of this century, between the 2000 and 2009, I believe it was, the pension obligations rose significantly because of generous offerings with respect to the defined pension that the council granted to the basically all of our workforce, but particularly and most significantly to our public safety employees, that is police and fire.
And what's interesting about that decision is it wasn't uncommon, especially in the past decade, for city councils to say, you know what, we won't give you that much of a raise, but we'll give you some more pension benefits, and so you'll see it on the other end. And it came home to roost.
Absolutely.
Those decisions.
And I can give you an example of how impactful that was to the city of San Bernardino, and that was from one day to the next when our city went from a 2.5% per year at age 55 to a 3.0 at age 50. And those numbers are difficult to understand, and we don't have time to explain all those. Yeah. But that resulted in an actual $75 million unfunded pension liability to the city from one day to the next. As that increase was adopted.
And when did that happen?
It went to a $75 million. I believe that was in 05 or 07, something like that.
And San Bernardino is part of CalPERS, right?
San Bernardino is part of CalPERS,
Still.
That is correct.
And CalPERS continue to ask for contributions based upon the requirements.
Absolutely, we are required to make it's a benefit defined program, CalPERS is, and so your obligation arises and falls depending upon the return CalPERS receives. And upon the actuarials that are involved with your employees and so on. So the increase is significant. Most cities, I believe, have an unfunded liability, which is huge, and it's very problematic, and that needs to be fixed as well. But
so how have you addressed the pension liability for the city during the bankruptcy?
Well, we realized that one of our largest obligations and one of our largest financial burdens involved the CalPERS pension obligation and the unfunded liability. We actually stopped making payments to CalPERS for a year. So we had not only did we have a huge unfunded liability, but we also had back payments due. So they were among the first creditors that we dealt with in our bankruptcy proceedings, thinking that we need to deal with CalPERS first to determine how and what, with what resources, how we're going to deal with the other creditors. The real crux of the matter came down to if we impair our pension obligations to our current employees and our past employees, we're going to have employees simply scatter and leave San Bernardino. Which would make us, of course, unable to provide services. And that's what the municipality is all about, providing services to the people. Most importantly, police and fire services.
But so if you don't have the money.
If you can imagine, if you all of a sudden say, well, we're going to impair your pensions by whatever percentage it might be, everybody's going to leave and find another job in another municipality, keep their pension benefits whole, and leave San Bernardino. So that was our primary concern. So we recognize the importance of maintaining our CalPERS obligations, and our financial fix was going to have to come through other avenues.
So in our final moments, CalPERS received 100 cents on the dollar?
That is correct, and we are now we're in the process of almost paying back that 1 year's of non-payment, and otherwise are current with our obligations. We have a large unfunded liability currently, of course, but that's one thing that has enabled us to keep our employment force so that we can continue to provide services. And we thought the impairment or the fixes needed to come from elsewhere. And that is something that I'm satisfied that we made that decision when we made it, and it continues to allow us to provide services to this day.
Will you come back?
Certainly.
I'd love to have you. His name is Gary Saenz. He is the city attorney for the city of San Bernardino. It's seeing better days today, no doubt. My name is Brad Pomerance in the Inland Empire, Charter Local Edition.